everyone, I am Jasmine. If you're new to this channel, I am an international medical graduate from the Philippines, and I talk about my residency application journey, my USMLE journey, and my Philippines physician licensure exam journey on this channel. And I'm also giving informative videos about the differences between applying to med school in the Philippines, how med school is like in the Philippines, and beyond, versus here in the US. So today's video is going to be about the MCAT and the NMAT. And if you like these type of videos, please like and subscribe. And yeah, let's get going with this video. All right. So getting into medical school is difficult regardless of where you apply, and a huge part of the selection in the students who make it to medical school is the admissions test. And for the US, that's the MCAT, or the Medical College Admissions Test. And for the Philippines, it's the NMAT, or the National Medical Admissions Test. And basically, these are two separate standardized tests. And the idea is that you would take this standardized test and it'll be applicable to all the medical colleges in the US and the Philippines, respectively. It's been about 5+ years since I took the MCAT and the NMAT. And so, please bear with me in the information that I'm going to be giving you, and also please do your own research. This is just my own experience with both exams. Let's go over what I used to study for the MCAT, because I took the MCAT first and I took the NMAT about a month and a half after. So for the MCAT, I used a reviewer. I used the Kaplan self-paced online reviewer. I purchased it. I had a discount code because of an affiliation that my organization in college was a part of, and so I was able to get it discounted. But I believe if you pay for it full price, it was about $5,000, which is a lot of money, but it does come with a giant set of informational textbooks. And those review books are basically all you need. And of course, it comes with access to the QBank and the lectures online. And with that, I was able to score pretty highly on the MCAT. I think, if I remember correctly, I scored within the 95th percentile. And I don't remember the numeric scoring exactly, I just remember the percentile. And that's a pretty good score, right? And I think the reason why I scored that well is because of the reviewer and because I had adequate background knowledge going into the MCAT. And then for the NMAT, I scored in the 99th percentile. And basically piggybacked my studying from the MCAT over to the NMAT. So I didn't really use any additional materials to study for the NMAT, except I took like one practice test, and that was it. So the subjects covered by both exams are pretty much identical. Both exams are in English, and pretty much they just test you on your basic science knowledge. And this is an incredibly wide scope. So this covers chemistry, biochemistry, biology, of course, the hard sciences too, like physics, and it even covers behavioral science questions too, so like psychology and the like. And I think the NMAT has a portion where it's kind of like an IQ test. It's like pattern recognition and spatial reasoning and stuff like that. This is my timeline of events. I took the MCAT in September of right before my senior year started in college. And then the NMAT I took in, I want to say November of, either October or November of my senior year of college. And in United States schools, if you want to go straight through to medical school from undergrad, you'd want to take your MCAT earlier than I did. Most people that I knew took their MCAT during junior year, and the people that were like me who took it during senior year or right before senior year started, they ended up having to take a gap year. So the reason why I didn't do a gap year is because I decided to go to med school in the Philippines, and in the Philippines the timeline is a little different. So with my test in October or November of my senior year, that gave me enough time to get my scores back and apply to medical schools in the Philippines. And so that's how the timeline is slightly different in the Philippines versus in the US. So with that premise, let's go through some basic FAQs. So first, do I need to take both exams? The answer to this question is no, you do not. You would only consider taking both exams if you are also considering going to medical school in the Philippines. And so if you only are targeting med schools in the United States, then the MCAT should suffice. But if you're like me and you wanted to apply to med schools in the Philippines as well, the NMAT is necessary. So how much do these exams cost? If I remember correctly, the NMAT cost for taking it in the United States versus taking it in the Philippines is more expensive. So they actually kind of match the cost of the MCAT. So they're both roughly the same. I want to say they're about $300 or $400 each. It might be different now. But yeah, it's pretty expensive. So the next question is, how much time to study for the exams? So this obviously depends on how well you know your subject material. For me, it took about 1 to 2 months to study for the MCAT. And like I mentioned earlier, I piggybacked my studying for the NMAT. And so it only took about another month later for me to be able to take the NMAT right after I took the MCAT. And so I felt like doing that was very helpful because I didn't have to have 2 separate studying periods for both exams. I kind of just had the knowledge from studying for the MCAT still fresh, and that was pretty much enough to get me through the NMAT because they're both basically the same exam. When should I take the exams? So for the MCAT, it takes a while for your scores to be available. So ideally, the earlier you take it, the better, especially if you're trying to get to med school straight through without taking a gap year. And so that's why people take it during their junior year, because then the score would be available and then they'll be ready to apply to medical schools early during their senior year. So like I also mentioned, for the NMAT, it's a little different. The NMAT, you can take your NMAT during your senior year and you still would have enough time to apply to med schools in the Philippines without having to take a gap year. And the reason for this is because the deadline for applications for US medical schools versus the deadline for applications in the Philippines have different timestamps or like have different dates. So that's why I was able to take the NMAT during my senior year in college and not have to take a gap year. Right, so the next question is, when will the score be released? So if I remember correctly, the MCAT score took a while. I want to say I waited anywhere between a month to 45 days for my score to be received. And you'll receive it in an email with a score report, and then you'll be able to electronically submit your MCAT scores to your med school applications. And as for the NMAT, your score also comes out electronically, but then you get it in the mail too. And so you need to keep that physical copy of your score, and because you'll be submitting that to your medical school applications in the Philippines. And I don't remember how long that took. I want to say it took about a month also. Once you have your score, basically you're pretty much ready to apply. And the next question is, how can I schedule my test? So the MCAT can be scheduled pretty much anytime you're ready to take it. You'll be scheduling it in a Prometric center online. You'll book an appointment. Ideally, you'd want to schedule it about 6 months in advance from when you want to take the exam, because the spots fill up very quickly. And if you don't get an appointment in a Prometric center that is close to you, you might end up in a Prometric center that's in a completely different city. And so that adds to your stress, because the morning of your exam, you'd have to travel further, or like get a hotel room the night before just to be able to take your exam. And so that's an added expense on top of an added stress. So just to keep the stress low, book your exam well in advance so that you can ensure that you have a slot in your Prometric center that is closest to where you live. And you'll be taking your exam with other people who might not be taking the MCAT. So when I took the MCAT, a few people were also taking the MCAT, but then there were also others who were there for some other tests. And that's because the Prometric Center offers a bunch of different exams, not just the MCAT or not just the medical professional exams. They also offer exams for other professions too. And then for the NMAT, on the other hand, there's only, I think, one date a year in the United States that you can take it. And all students or all test takers must go to the venue, the same venue. And I lucked out when I was in college because the venue was in Los Angeles, and I didn't have to book a hotel or book a flight in order to travel and take the exam. I just literally took an Uber and I made it. Next question, how long is the exam? So the MCAT is about 7.5 hours. And it's 4 blocks, up to 50 minutes per question block. And the breaks that are allowed are optional. So if you wanted to, you can finish the exam faster and not take any breaks and just, blast through all of the questions. But I don't recommend doing that. Take your break. You're gonna need it. Otherwise, your brain is gonna be fried. And then the next one is the NMAT. So the NMAT is about 4 to 5 hours long, and this one also has breaks in between the different parts of the exam. Next, what is the format of the exam? So the MCAT is all computer-based. It's at a Prometric center, so everything is on the computer, and they'll give you scratch pads or scratch paper to write on, but otherwise you're not allowed any sort of technology, no calculators or whatever. Everything will be available to you through the computer system of the exam. And then for the NMAT is a paper-based test. It's a Scantron exam, so you'd need pencils. They also provide you with scratch paper and the test papers, of course, and the Scantrons will be provided to you as well. Where will the exam be held? So I touched on this briefly for the NMAT. For the NMAT, I took mine in Los Angeles because it was the only available testing place that was offered. And then for the MCAT, because it's available through the Prometric Center, you can literally book it at any Prometric Center that has an opening. Ideally, a Prometric Center that's close to where you live. And so for the subjects covered, I touched on this earlier. It's, again, the basic sciences. So biology, chemistry, organic chemistry and inorganic chemistry, and also biochem. And then there's also physics that it tests you on, and then psychology, of course. And then I touched on this briefly also, but the NMAT has a spatial reasoning / logic test portion. So pattern recognition, basically it's like a short portion of the test where they give you a set of patterns, and then you have to choose based on that set of patterns what pattern comes next. So if you've ever taken an IQ test in your life, it's basically that. Yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all I wanted to talk about this. Other tips that I have is to pack snacks with you, have a good night's rest, exercise while you're studying. Make sure that on top of keeping your mental health intact, also make sure that your physical health is good, and just be calm. You'll know when you're ready for the exam as you're studying for it, and if you see that you're not ready for it as you're taking your practice exams, postpone your exam. The score is incredibly important for medical school admissions, and yes, best of luck to you. And if you have any more questions about this, please feel free to leave a comment down below, and I'll try my best to answer your questions. And that is it. Goodbye, and I will see you in the next one.